From the National Press Club in Washington, D.C., this is Update One, the club's official podcast. It features newsworthy stories originating from the NPC facilities, as well as broader topics related to journalism, communications, press freedom, and transparency. Welcome to Update One. I'm Mike Hempen, a co-chair of the Broadcast Podcast Committee here at the National Press Club. On this edition of Update One, we are joined by crime novelist David Baldacci. He has published more than 50 adult novels, the first one being published in 1996. All have become national and international bestsellers. They have sold more than 150 million copies worldwide. He also has published 7 novels for young people, and many of his novels have been adapted for film and television. David, welcome to Update One.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
On this podcast, we often deal with real life and current events involving journalists or politics. I know your novels always have a real life aspect to them, and I know you do extensive research before writing your novels. Is it that research that allows you to bring real life to your writing?
Yeah, I think the research also provides plot ideas. It's where you can get creative. I think thriller writers' jobs are sort of to see what's present in the world today, and then our job is then to see what might be possible a little bit down the road. And you sort of take what's going on today and throw in some imagination, but also some predictions of your own based on your own reading and knowledge of what's going on in the world, and see what it could look like a little bit down the road. Thrillers are supposed to thrill, and the way you do that is to show people the future sometimes, both the good and the bad. So I think the research is very important, but obviously as a novelist, you have to leave most of the research out. Otherwise, you turn it into a textbook filled with lots of things the reader doesn't need. So I do a lot of very immersive research that I can sort of shortcut the research, shorthand it into the novel, put it into a sentence or a paragraph or some dialogue, so that it gives the reader the information they need to follow the story. It helps me to enhance the plot. It helps to flesh out characters. Unless the research can answer those 3 questions or speak to those 3 questions, I think you have to leave it out. But yeah, the research is very important. It drives a lot of what I do.
Now, I know being a crime novelist, it's very important to understand the mindset of serial killers. How do you go about doing that?
Well, you sort of have to leap into that world as much as you can. I've talked to analysts who have, interviewed people with that mindset. I have read lots of books on literature, lots of papers on literature, done some of my own research on it. And it's sort of like it's the boogeyman, it's a safe scare. People want to know about guys like Ted Bundy, not that they'd ever want to meet them anywhere, but they'd like to know how in the world a human being could be that, because we're all human beings, and how does one turn out like Ted Bundy? So I think it's sort of fascinating. It's the safe scare that we used to have when we were kids, and adults still have that. So for me, I have to build into a killer like that, sort of what exists in the real world for them as well. Someone like Ted Bundy, his mind is not like the rest of ours. He's lacking empathy, sympathy, that part of his brain. They've done research with serial killers, and that part of the brain does not light up. There's nothing there. So when they go and kill people, it's not like they see human beings like you or I would. They see things to dominate, control, and then dispatch. And they don't feel any remorse for it because that part of the brain is totally empty. It's horrifying, scary as hell, but it does happen. Now, other killers, they have different motivations. People kill all the time who have sympathy and empathy, and they're normal human beings. Other than the fact they've killed someone else, they could kill in a crime of passion. They could kill because they needed to get rid of somebody for whatever reason. And those are interesting studies as well. And I've written about all sorts of those types of people.
You have a law degree, and I believe you practiced law for nearly a decade before becoming a writer. Does your law degree and your law background influence your writing in any way?
Sure. As a lawyer, all I did was research and write, and either write briefs or stand up in court and, make my soliloquies. So that was an important part of what I did as a lawyer. And it also taught me to be disciplined and dedicated and strong work ethic. I'd work on cases for years at a time, so it wasn't like working on a book for years at a time was daunting. That was sort of familiar territory for me. I'd been writing since I was a kid, but even I hadn't been. The transition from being a lawyer to being a writer was not as great a leap as people might imagine it would be.
Let me ask you, David, obviously you've had a fantastic career writing fiction. Did you ever give nonfiction a try?
I read a lot of nonfiction, and I liked it a lot. I've written a couple of historical thrillers over the last year. One is Calamity of Souls, is a courtroom drama set in 1968. And this last spring, I wrote a book called Strangers in Time that was set in 1944 in wartime London. So those were as close to nonfiction as I've ever gotten, even though obviously the story was fictionalized. But how those people lived in both those novels and things going on during that time period were completely authentic, obviously, and it made it as realistic as possible. So with those two books, I got a little bit of the, understanding and feel that you would get in writing a nonfiction book.
But you never really seriously thought about nonfiction, is that right?
No, I mean, I enjoy creating the plots and the characters. I would be bound to real human beings and real events if I wrote nonfiction. For me, that would be a little too constraining. My imagination is such that when I'm working on a novel, I love to sort of create large portions of it out of scratch, out of nothing. And that's what really drives me.
Now, I know you mentioned Strangers in Time. As you said, you published it earlier this year, set in London during World War II. How did you go about developing that plot?
Well, a lot of books obviously have been written about World War II, so how could I make mine different? I decided that I would take three people and tell their point of view through the story. One was a boy from the East End who had very little. One was a girl from the West End who was very affluent. And the third one was an adult bookstore owner who lived in the Strand, pretty much equidistant between the boy and the girl. And then during the course of the novel, I took what little the boy had away, and I took everything the girl had away, and the three of them had to come together and unite to try to survive the war, whereas individually they probably could not have. As a trio, they had a shot. And I wanted to show people, even in the darkest of times, when you thought the whole world was going to explode in flames, that there is reason to hope, and that human beings are resilient, and that if you're going to have to go through bad times, it's a pretty good idea to go through them with other people and not alone, because solitarily human beings going through really bad times, not the best way to do it. You can run down lots of rabbit holes pretty quickly. But if you have people who support you and care about you, and they go through those bad times together with you, it makes it a little bit easier. And that was a message I wanted to get across with that story.
Obviously, you've had a great career as a writer, and we mentioned practicing law before that. If you weren't writing, would you be a lawyer, or do you think you'd be doing something else?
I've thought about that. I might be a teacher. I like mentoring other writers and helping them in their careers. I might have gone into some type of, federal law enforcement or some type of intelligence service, because I do like sort of problem solving and breaking things down and taking information and turning it into something positive and useful. So those might have been career paths that I could have chosen had I not gone down this one.
Let me ask you about your foundation, Wish You Well Foundation. I know it supports family and adult literacy programs in the U.S., and obviously that's a very important cause. If you can talk about how long your foundation has been around.
My wife and I founded it about 24 years ago, and people don't understand how incredibly important literacy is. It's the most important thing you will have in your life, because it allows you, it will tell you the ability and capacity for you to engage in the world and to think things through. So if you can't read at a high level, it's almost impossible for you to be an engaged citizen in a democracy. The amount of information, you as a journalist will know this, the amount of information flowing at people reaches to terabytes. And if you can't separate the chaff from the reality and know what's disinformation and what's not, you're going to have a very hard time deciding who you're going to vote for. And it's only going to get worse as AI and other types of technology ramp up even more. It will also decide how socioeconomically successful you will be. If you have low literacy skills, you will not be economically successful. And if you have low literacy skills, the chances are very high all of your children and generations after that will be literacy challenged as well. And that will make society suffer as a whole. I've told people over the years that what price would you pay to get rid of homelessness, crime, poverty, and social injustice? Because if you got rid of illiteracy in this country, you would solve all of those problems, because study after study has shown they're inextricably tied to illiteracy. And I think most people would say I would pay any amount of money to do that. Unfortunately, we're going the other way. Fewer and fewer people are reading now. Cognitive skills are declining. Synapses are not firing the way they used to. College students are having a very difficult time reading an entire novel. So now instead of novels on the syllabus, they're having summaries of novels, because everything is tied to social media, where you get your bits of information in 30-second dribs and drabs, which is actually making the brain weaker. I mean, it's a pretty dire situation, but right now it seems irreversible.
That's just it. The fact fewer people are reading. Is that because of social media, or are there other reasons as well?
I think a big part of it is social media. Absolutely is. You get this pop of dopamine when you go on and doom scroll for 6 hours, and then people just keep doing it. It's Pavlov's experiment over and over again. And they've designed it. It's almost like, social media is designed like nicotine. They give you this pop in your brain, and you want to go back to it. It's like being hooked on meth. I know it sounds weird, but it's exactly what it is. And it works, too. When I ask people, how much time do you spend on your citizenship exercises? And they say, what are you talking about? I said, how you talk to people about issues, how you talk to people who may disagree with you, how to try to come to common ground, how you if your boss gave you a job and he gave you 4 years to do it, and you're supposed to work on it every day for 4 years, and at the end of 4 years, you're supposed to come up with a really great presentation, and then you don't do anything for 4 years, and the very day you're supposed to go in, you jump on a podcast and try to get some quick information and then go and tell your boss, here's what I found out, you'd probably be fired. But that's how people approach presidential elections all the time. They grab the sheet at the very end of the day, they jump on a podcast to see who they're supposed to vote for, and they do, and you get, you put crap in and you get crap out. So I ask people, how much do you spend on your citizenship exercises like you do your body? And they say, I don't do any of that. And I said, well, that's probably one of the reasons that we're in the problems we have today, because we ultimately control our destiny on that. And if you don't put the work in, then the results coming out are going to be pretty bad. And they said, well, I'm really busy. I have a lot of things going on. I work 2 jobs. And I said, I totally get that. But at the end of the day, look on your phone when it gives you your screen time report. And when it says you spend 11 hours and 15 minutes a day on your device, you probably could find 30 minutes to maybe talk to somebody about serious issues.
Very good point. Many valid points there. David, thanks for your time. We do appreciate you doing this interview with us.
Okay, thank you.
I'm Mike Hempen. Thanks for listening. You have been listening to Update One, the official podcast of the National Press Club, the world's leading professional organization for journalists and a vigorous advocate of press freedom worldwide. If you have any questions or comments about Update One, send an email to updateonepodcast@gmail.com.